From the center of the universe and the home of your Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, as we get you set for Toronto Argonauts' final game of the regular season, this one against the Ottawa Redblacks in Ottawa. Before we get into the heart of our podcast, I want to tell you about Something in the Water Brewing, a place that you should go to pre-game. You're going to the East Final. You don't know who it's going to be at Montreal-Hamilton, but you know obviously your Argos are playing. Drop by Something in the Water pre-game. You can try some Longboat Pale Ale, the beer made for fans of the Double Blue. You can try any of their award-winning beers, and it is just steps from BMO Field. It's also steps from Lamport Stadium, where the team practices, so that's an option for you as well. Liberty Village, Something in the Water Brewing. If you haven't been there, you've got to check them out. We had a lot to get to today, JB. We've got contract extensions for Josh Hagerty, the DB, not the punter. We've got contract extension for David Ungerer as well. A couple of new signings we can talk briefly about. Ralph Hawley and Amani Dennis, both USFL guys that have come up north. There's the CFL award nominations that came out today. Each team nominating their award candidates, and so we'll go through those for the Toronto Argonauts. Some rumors as well about Corey Mace, Pete Costanza, two Argos coaches that are apparently in the mix for the Saskatchewan job, and we can talk about that a little bit. We talked about Coach Mace a bit last week. We can talk about Costanza a bit more today. And the upper deck on the east side of BMO has opened for ticket sales. All that, plus all our usual stuff, injuries, game preview, OCDC, one thing, predictions, put me down for 20, and our CFL picks. All that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. So two extensions. JB, let's get into those first. Josh Hagerty, David Ungerer. Let's talk about Josh Hagerty first. Kind of a little injury riddled this season. He had some really bad luck. Got some very valuable playing time, though, as well. This is a pretty good move for the Argos, though, overall, right?
It is. It's interesting. I know they like him a lot. I think he's been a really productive special teamer for them in the past. And, you know, I think they like his reliability, the fact that he is dependable in terms of he does what you ask him to do. And sometimes, as a coach, it's nice to have a guy like that. And so it's nice. He's earning himself a nice CFL career by being efficient and productive.
Yeah, he's an excellent special teamer, and I think he's got some playing time as well, and that will help to be called upon. I don't think they're going into next season thinking, well, he's going to be a starter at safety. I don't think that's going to be the plan, but knowing that he has experience there, that he's been in some big games, and also that he's an elite special teamer, he has to be healthy. Like, he started the season with a hand injury, got banged up again. I think it was shoulder, which he's been dealing with. So yeah, it couldn't have been worse for luck for him. But I think this is a nice move to bring him back. Yeah, they clearly like him a lot. He's obviously very coachable. Those are big things. What about David Ungerer? I think maybe one of the there's so many pleasant surprises on this year's team. I didn't know what to expect about that signing. He's been, I think, as good as you possibly could have expected, given that it seemed like Hamilton had basically given up on him, and he's certainly got a new life in Toronto.
Yeah, he's been sort of that kind of Wes Welker, Julian Edelman model. Kelly has a nice chemistry with him. He's been a really nice outlet for check down passes. He's got really steady hands. I think I love that idea. It's not my idea, but certainly I think Mike Lombardi had it first, the idea of building a wide receiver room like a basketball team. And you want to have a center and a forward and a power forward and a point guard. And I think that he brings a different aspect to that wide receiver room. And he's done it really well. He is, you look at his catch versus target rate, he's been really dependable. He finds spots in zones. That's a really nice complement to some of the deeper, longer play guys.
For sure. And I love that he will go anywhere. Like he'll catch balls over the middle of the field. They moved him in, line him up as a tight end. Like it's, anywhere that they want to put him. He's not typically the tight end body, but
Well, he's the kind of guy that keeps drives going, right? He's not necessarily the guy who's going to, score dagger touchdowns, but when you're, second and 5 and you need that completion, it's really helpful to have a guy that you can depend on who can find a spot in the zone and convert the first down. I mean, that's not something that every wide receiver is built to do.
let's talk about these two new signings, and we'll just do that briefly because these are sort of future signings. These aren't guys that are going to come in and contribute this year. So Ralph Holley, Amani Dennis, both of them picked up from the, most recently with the Philadelphia Stars. I think Amani Dennis intrigues me in a very different way from Ralph Holley. So with Amani Dennis, he had some real playing time in Philadelphia. 2 seasons there, was very much involved. He's also got some really interesting measurables that jump out. At his pro day, he ran a 4.36. That is eye-opening. 695 3-cone. He's not a huge guy at 5'10", 170, but those speed measurables are pretty interesting. 34-inch vertical as well. So, he's a guy that there is some good tape on. I haven't watched film on either of these guys yet. That's in my plans. I'll do that in the offseason preparing for next year. These aren't this season guys, like I said, but those numbers alone I think are intriguing. Ralph Holley, I think one of the things I'm intrigued about with him, again, sort of the size-speed combo he's a defensive lineman. Sorry, if I didn't say that, Amani Dennis is a DB. Ralph Holley is a defensive tackle. And he's sort of got that Brinkman sort of build, 6 feet, 300, and ran his 40 under 5 seconds. So those are nice combinations that you've got there. I also like looking back at his college numbers. He improved pretty significantly every season. He just kept getting better. And to me, that speaks to someone that's very coachable. And if you've got that sort of really unusual size speed combo that isn't big enough to be an NFL guy, maybe you give him a shot up here and maybe he works out. And I think you're looking at Jared Brinkman and hoping that you get something like that from a guy like Ralph Holley.
Yeah, I think both seem to have some, like, neither jumps out. I mean, I think when we saw Brinkman, we immediately felt really excited about that signing. So I don't think it's that, but I like them constantly churning over and looking for guys. I think it's been the secret sauce of the mega power team that they've built is amongst the great free agent signings are these diamonds in the rough that they find. And so I love even at this point in the season that they are still looking to churn for next year.
Let's get into the CFL award nominations. So this process is always really interesting. You kind of get to see what each team puts out in terms of most outstanding player, most outstanding defensive player, most outstanding Canadian, most outstanding lineman, special teams player, rookie. And each team gets one, but only one nomination. And then these go forward to be voted on for league-wide awards. So the Argos mostly were unanimous. They were easier this season, I think, than in most seasons, with maybe a couple categories where there might have been some discrepancy. So we'll go through those. Around the league, though, there weren't too many surprises. There were a couple, though. And JB, I want your thoughts on a couple of these here. So one that stood out to me was, and I think maybe it's the most interesting one, is Winnipeg nominating Brady Oliveira instead of Zach Collaros for most outstanding player. Oliveira is having a historic season running the football, but it's unusual to put forward your running back over your quarterback when your quarterback is leading in virtually every statistical category. So what do you make of seeing Brady Oliveira as the MOP from Winnipeg as opposed to Zach Collaros?
It feels like something Collaros might have kind of signed off on or been behind in terms of wanting to recognize Oliveira for everything he's done for the team this year and how he's kind of taken that jump forward. It's interesting because it's not true. Like at the end of the day, if they don't have Caleros, then they are not who they are. But I like that he's being recognized, and he definitely has progressed every year, and I think it's probably good for their room to kind of share the glory. It seems like a very Mike O'Shea thing to do to nominate the running back.
Yeah, and it's coming from it's also coming from Football Reporters of Canada votes as well as a vote from the head coach, but that they combine to sort of I guess choose who they want. But I think there's also we see this a lot in sports where it's almost like, well, we've done this already. This is new though.
There's fatigue for sure. I mean, I think there's fatigue for who wins the award. Definitely. I mean, I think there's fatigue for wanting a new player just because it makes you feel like you're doing something as opposed to, well, we could have filled this ballot out in March.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's something to that. And it's why LeBron James didn't win the MVP every single season.
That's why Steve Nash did.
Well, yeah, not to knock Steve Nash, but it is an opportunity. It was something new. I don't deny that played into it.
Yeah, not to go with that, but I mean, obviously, Steve Nash would not be traded for Shaquille O'Neal.
No, I wouldn't make that deal. Let's get into the Argos players. So for most outstanding player, this one was unanimous and really easy. Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly is, to me, and I think to you as well, the league's most outstanding player. He is the best player on a historically good team. And not only is he the best player on a historically good team, he's the best player at the most important position on a historically good team and the most difficult position. And I think you weigh all those things together.
It's his first year.
I know. That's the thing too. It's his first year playing. Like one start last year in the final game of the regular season. But yeah, that's it. It's amazing what he has done. And
I wonder if he's punished by, like, suppose, like in an imaginary world, suppose, Hamilton was really good and they were chasing the Argos and Hamilton had 13 wins. I think that changes the conversation if Kelly keeps winning games for Toronto. But because they're lapping guys, the wins and it doesn't resonate as much as staying in front. And I think in some ways his argument is hurt by the lack of achievement by Montreal and Hamilton.
Oh, for sure it is. Like they wrapped up the division September 15th. Like that. And he hasn't had a meaningful game and he's not putting up 400 yards passing in meaningless games, because why would you do that?
Yeah, if he's winning these games as he is and these games count, I think, I do think he's a bit of a victim of his success.
And I think we've talked about this before, but you come back to the fact that he just doesn't have bad games. He doesn't have bad. Every other quarterback, Zach Caleros has had a couple of really weird games for him. Vernon Adams has had a bunch of bad games. Chad Kelly does not have bad games. His worst game, you look at the stat line, you're like, oh, Kelly didn't play that well. And he was like 18 of 25 for 287, a touchdown and a pick. Like, oh,
yeah, I guess he hasn't had that many like off the chart games, right? Like the 375, 3 touchdown.
Because you don't do that when you win by 20.
No, I know, but I do think that also like factors a little into it. That traditionally, you look at like he has, like statistically he is good, but he has not lit the league on fire.
But I would argue that it's because he just hasn't had to. Like their running game's been going. They didn't throw the ball in the second half.
No, I understand, but that's like saying I think the right tackle should be the most. I understand from a football point of view what you're arguing. I'm just saying that's not how one wins trophies.
It's true, and I don't think he will win most outstanding player. I don't think he'll win. I think he should. I don't think he will, because I think people get very consumed by stats and they want to see 400-yard passing games from a quarterback, and he just doesn't have a collection of those. So,
and he's from the wrong city.
Well, maybe some of that too. So most outstanding defensive player, this one was really interesting and not unanimous. It was between two guys, Darius Pickett, Wynton McManus. And Adarius Pickett ends up being the pick. Wyndham McManus, absolutely deserving, but Adarius Pickett equally deserving, and in the minds of the collective voters more so. And I think there's a factor here too where Adarius Pickett was so valuable on special teams. Also had such, especially early on, they took him an awful lot of those. Like we haven't seen Adarius play special teams since September for a good reason. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him back in there in these final, because he was so good in those special teams roles, and everything they put him in, he was a difference maker. I did feel he cooled off a little bit, but it's misleading because he cooled off in games that don't matter. And so that's kind of what you should do. Like Wyndham McManus, on the other hand, got hot. Like the last few weeks, Winton's been on fire. Adarius Pickett a little bit less so, but I think they'll both obviously ramp things up in the playoffs. Surprised with Adarius Pickett? Is it the right pick in your mind? How do you view that one?
Yeah, I mean, we had debated that. I think we were on it early. And I still agree that obviously McManus has been spectacular the last 5 games and is a terrific choice. But I think Pickett was sort of asked to do more, multifaceted. Whether when people got hurt, he was asked to move around the field. I think that he brought an energy and a speed and a variety to the defense that really made him jump out. I think he's an excellent choice, as I think we've both felt for the majority of the season.
I think one argument for Pickett is that there's no one we talked about this when he was injured. There's no one on the team that can replace him. Not the same way. Like obviously they put a guy in there, but it's not the same. Wyndham McManus, just as good a player, but they had other guys on the roster that could come in, and it's not as huge a drop-off as it was with Pickett. So I do think that's one thing that might tip the scales there for Adarius Pickett. I think that's probably something the coaching staff realized when he went down, and they're like, man, we can't lose this guy, because you look around as to who can replace him, and it's a pretty short list. Anyone that you could bring in, you're going to suddenly create a giant hole elsewhere. So I think that goes into it too. Most outstanding Canadian, this one's Royce Metchie, and I was really happy to see him get the nod on that. A couple guys that you could have gone with, but Royce Metchie just having a terrific season. He's another guy that played multiple positions when he was called to. He was one of the guys that when we watched the Argos lose both halfbacks, Royce Metchie is the one that moves around. Adarius Pickett goes down. Royce Metchie is the one that comes up. He went everywhere. He's played everywhere in the secondary, but corner this season. And so for him, most outstanding Canadian, I think, is a really logical choice. You could have gone Lyman there too. I think there's some good options there, but yeah, Royce Metchie is the right one for me.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been incredible, really. He's been kind of unsung, or not kind of, absolutely unsung, but has allowed that defense to not completely fall apart when they're moving guys in and out. He's been a load supporting pillar.
No, absolutely. And I think you give him credit for, like, Mason Pierce has come in and been sensational. The last few weeks, Mason Pierce is playing out of his mind. You got to give some credit to Royce Metchie there, because he's the guy next to him. He's running that secondary from that safety spot. And so to have two different guys, Tavares McFadden, who's never really played that kind of role before, and Mason Pierce on the other side of him, and both those guys are playing lights out football, Royce Metchie gets a lot of credit for that. So yeah, I was happy to see that. What's interesting is, I don't think he's going to win I don't think he's going to get the East MVP nod at safety. I think when you've got Marc-Antoine Dequoy in Montreal, you've got Stavros Katsantonis in Hamilton, both guys who have put up, I think, bigger highlights. I think Royce Metchie, to me, has been more valuable than either of those guys. But I think Dequoy, the stuff that Dequoy has done, some of the picks that he's made, and some of the hits that he's made too. Yeah,
I mean, picks are the currency of picks are the touchdowns for running backs, and the sacks for defensive linemen. It's a totally uneven weighting of the value of something, but that's just how it is.
Most outstanding offensive lineman was really tough as well, because you had a bunch of good candidates, and I think really you had 4 guys that that you're looking at here, and it's the guys that played most of the games, like from Ryan Hunter over to Dejan Allen. All four of those guys were outstanding all year long. So you've got Ryan Hunter, who from the moment he arrived in Toronto was fantastic. He changed the way that the Argos run game functioned. He was a very good pass protector, just a great communicator, and highly flexible too. Could move to the tackle spot when he needed to, and he did need to. Is technically able to play center too. To be able to have a guy like that, and he's also the tight end when they bring out heavy formations. So a guy that can do anything. You've got Sirocco at center, who I think has had a really good season. I think he probably won't get the recognition even after the fact, even when we get to All-Star nominations. I don't think he's going to end up being the All-Star center because he hasn't had the same, he's had such good guard play beside him that he hasn't been asked the same things. And so he's always got a clean sheet. He's playing great football, but the demands on him, I think, are less than someone that's got guards that are sieves on either side of them. And he's got the opposite situation where he's got two solid guards. Nicastro having an even better year than his rookie year, where he was an all-star and a finalist for Rookie of the Year, and he's playing better this season. So he could have been in this conversation. And then Dejan Allen, I think, is the best offensive lineman. So I want you to give me your thought on Hunter as a guard versus Dejan Allen a tackle, and I'll give you my weighting on that and why I think Dejan Allen is the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about Hunter. I think he is one of the primary reasons that the team went from a good team to a championship team and now continues to be a championship team. I think he is spectacularly efficient and hard-nosed and just is a dream to be able to plug in and not have to worry about, like referees, if you never hear an offensive lineman's name, the less you hear it, the better they are. And you almost never hear Ryan Hunter's name. Rarely do TV broadcasts pick really nice combo blocks or pickups. They tend to highlight blown plays. So I think my vote would have been Ryan Hunter. It's just a personal appreciation. But there is a hierarchy, that one that apparently everybody in the CFL follows. But, usually teams recognize tackle as the elite position of the line, and then the guard, and then the center. So to some extent, I think a top tackle is going to trump a top guard in, to use kind of a poker analogy rather than a hierarchy. So Allen is fantastic, and I'm fully behind it, but I do think there's probably a little bit of that goes into it. At the end of the day, the tackle is asked to do a little bit more than the guard.
I'm not sure you know how poker works, but I'll continue
well,
on.
I was trying to get full house over three of a kind, that kind of stuff. I was trying to be less hierarchical in evaluating the two. I was just speaking to how I think teams and often football people look at offensive line positions.
That makes sense to me, and I do believe that. It is much more difficult to find a tackle than it is to find a guard. Now, yeah. Hunter, again, nothing against Ryan Hunter. He's fantastic. He is a difference maker. Like you said, this line turned around. For me, Allen he so quietly goes about. Actually, all these guys do though, but so quietly goes about his job. To go from left tackle to right tackle. And I think he's even better now as a right tackle, which wasn't really his position. He played all 5 spots in Hawaii, but he was able to go from left to right to left. It didn't matter to him. He's just one of those guys that can play both sides just as well. He's outstanding to me. And this is the only positional group that I grade after every game. I need to because I don't have stats for it. Also, my eye isn't typically as good at evaluating O-line on the fly as it is at some other positions that I think are easier for me. And so I grade offensive linemen after every game when I rewatch as best I can. And I had Allen slightly ahead of Hunter at the end of it. Both fantastic, but I had Allen slightly ahead. I also think it is a slightly more important position. And so for me, I think that makes sense to give Allen the nod there. But again, nothing against Hunter. He's been great. And let's not forget about Nicastro, because he's been phenomenal this season as well. Most outstanding special teams player. I feel sorry for Boris Bede here, because I think in any other Argos season, Boris Bede wins this hands down as the sort of triple crown league leader at the moment. Field goal percentage, punting distance, kickoff yardage. Boris Bede has done everything except this was the year of Javon Leake, and he is the unanimous decision as the special teams, most outstanding special teams player. This completely makes sense, but you do have to feel a little bit for Boris, but Leake is doing things that people just haven't done around here.
Yeah, I mean, he has brought a return game that they did not have, and it's why they've won so many games, because they're now, a three team franchise, right? Where, really specials weren't that good last year. They were okay, but it wasn't a power of the team in terms of winning the Grey Cup. And now specials are as good as the offense and defense, and, teams scheme for Leake, and he is an unusual runner. He's not as twitchy as returners often are. But his second gear is spectacular, and his biggest, the touchdowns are great, but his ability to get the team starting position has really had a huge impact. They basically start at the 45 every time.
And it's a combination of his returns and other teams being afraid.
Yeah, honestly, how many times can you think of the Argos starting on their own 10 or something?
Well, I've actually got a stat that backs that up, and it's an amazing stat. Going into this game, and I would love to see this game's the dicey one, because who knows what it's going to look like. But going to the final game of the season, the Argos have had better starting field position than their opponent in every single game all season long. And that's unheard of.
Right.
I'm sure that has never happened in CFL history and NFL history. It just doesn't happen. And it's because they've got three phases that work so well, and special teams is a big part of that.
Right. And they're just constantly starting at the 45 or the 50. Must be endlessly irritating for defensive coordinators.
Well, it's also why Chad Kelly doesn't have 400-yard games. He can't.
Right.
His drives are 40 yards long.
Yeah. Well, his single passes are.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last category is most outstanding rookie. This is a unanimous one. This is so easy because he doesn't play like a rookie despite being the youngest guy on the team. Qantas Stiggers has done everything asked of him and more. And we saw it the first time we saw him back in Guelph. We knew there was something special here. I don't think we knew the degree to which he was special, though.
Well, for sure, because you're like, whoa, I just sort of felt like, who's the NFL guy? His athleticism and speed and physicality just absolutely jumped out at you. It just, even among elite professional athletes, he is pretty spectacular. So yeah, it's amazing to see. We sort of debated, was he going to start or not at the beginning of the season, and he's been probably their best defensive back.
It's hard to say, because I do think Jamal Peters has had, we forget about him. And I think it's one of those things you're talking about too before, where we kind of we know he's consistently the guy, and we kind of just sort of assume, Jamal Peters. But we forget how great Jamal Peters is. He's fantastic.
And I think teams are not targeting him.
Right.
Really, I think that's an aspect too, for sure. Is if you get a lot of picks, a lot of time that drops off the table, because now you get circled and highlighted on the plan.
Let's get into our potential head coaches that are on the Argos staff, and there are a few of them, and I think probably even more than are being brought up this year down the road. But Pete Costanza has been thrown into the mix now. A couple of people talking about how he is going to be a candidate for the Saskatchewan head coaching job. First of all, I want to say, you probably don't know as much about Coach Costanza as you do about some of the other Argos coaches, whether it's positional coaches or coordinators. Pete Costanza is a fantastic football coach. He's incredibly bright. He's won everywhere he's gone. He's got 5 Grey Cup rings, which is again an amazing thing for a guy that's like just over 50. He's got 5 Grey Cup rings. He won 3 in Calgary, went to Winnipeg, won there, came to Toronto, won here. He's just won wherever he's gone. He's been surrounded by great staffs too. Imagine like during that Saskatchewan, that's like the opposite of what I'm thinking about right now. Calgary's run where they won Grey Cup after Grey Cup. He's there for that, surrounded by that staff. And of course, you've got a lot of that same staff in Toronto now, but great football minds. Goes to Winnipeg. That's a great coaching staff too that he was a part of there. And then comes to Toronto to be reunited with a bunch of guys. And knowing how bright he is and how intelligent a football mind he is, being surrounded by all of these guys that he's able to absorb from, there's no doubt in my mind that Pete Costanza will make a fantastic head coach. I think he's got to be a long shot in this case because he's not coming from a coordinator role and jumping right up to it. It's not the same as being an OC and going up to it. Now, we saw Coach Dinwiddie make that jump. He went from quarterbacks coach right into head coach. But I think Saskatchewan, just in the situation they're in, probably ends up going with something that seems less risky, even though I think he would be a great choice for head coach.
Yeah, I think teams will always be driven to have an offensive coach. I think that's the way the NFL is heading. I think to some extent also the CFL. It's more exciting to sell. People want offense. I think the idea of bringing in somebody who can be a quarterback whisperer or so forth. I mean, I think you just look at Toronto. I think Dinwiddie in some ways hurts Coach Mace because offense is what people want, and want somebody to come in and kind of clean that up, and then hire a coordinator to do defense. That seems to be what people are leaning towards, but I think that's. Look, obviously, Pete Costanza has been amazing. I just think Coach Mace is the total package.
Yeah, and I think probably, I think you're right. Like you were talking about Coach Mace and why they might go a different direction, why they might go offense. I think this might be one of those situations where for Toronto it works out because I think they probably do hire an offensive guy in Saskatchewan, and I think they probably go with someone that's a little bit more known because, again, it's Saskatchewan, and right now those fans are furious. They want a big name. They want someone to come in where they're like, oh, this guy's going to come in. And you've heard rumors about Henry Burris and Kerry Joseph and Maximic, who's gotten a lot of attention for his really effective and flashy offense in BC. And I think Saskatchewan fans are like, yeah, we want that. And I don't think they necessarily see that when they think of Costanza. And so I think both of those guys probably are on the Argos staff, which is great for the Argos next year. But those guys will both eventually get their shot because they're too good not to. And I think that's the reason they're probably not going to be here long. But I think Argos fans at least will get to enjoy them for another season. JB, Upper Deck tickets are now on sale in the East Side. Ticket sales have been going so well. The lower bowl is entirely sold out, and the upper bowl on the West Side is entirely sold out. You can get tickets on the end zone, the north end zone, which they just opened a couple days ago. So those tickets are available, and they now have opened up the East balcony, which is awesome. They did this for the playoff game last year, but it was with only a couple days left before the East final. We're a couple weeks away here, and so there's a chance that I don't know if BMO is going to sell out. I would love it to. I'd encourage you to go buy tickets if you haven't yet, but it's going to get close. The fact that you still haven't got into the rush of ticket sales from it being top of mind and from other teams bringing fans in too, and yet they're already having to open the Upper Deck. I think that's amazing, and it speaks to the attention that's being paid to the Argos and how excited people are about this football team.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, they have in the past, had a better turnout at that final than before, and I think that people have gone. I mean, people who went last year, it was a terrific time. I think the city is excited about the game and are excited about the Grey Cup being in the GTA. So potentially you can do both games. I think that probably helps a little bit. having Chad Kelly, I think, has helped. It makes sense that the people are excited for that final. It's great to see. It's nice to see the uptick in attendance all year, and that the final might be sold out, because that place is, I've been there when it is sold out for soccer, and it is like a Roman Colosseum. It is unbelievable when you have a full house. So I think that would be amazing. I don't think maybe fans who have not been there for like a Canadian national game or TFC in their prime might not know the level of noise that can be generated when that place is packed. It's good, and also it keeps out Hamilton if in case they make it, if we can get that place blue.
Yeah, and maybe not the darker Montreal Alouette blue.
Well, I don't think anybody's coming from Montreal. That hasn't been my experience.
Let's get into the injury report. This is a pretty interesting one. So there's some really good news for Argos fans as well. There's a lot of names to go through. I'm not going to go through every name because I don't think some of them are as relevant to this game this week. But I want to highlight some that are in the good news category, certainly. So Dejan Allen practiced full yesterday and today. I don't expect him to go this week because why would you? It's possible they'll dress him just because he hasn't played in a few weeks. Maybe they want to get him a series or two. I wouldn't expect to see him out there though, but it's great that he's able to practice full. He's back to full health. Boris Beattie practiced full after being a healthy scratch. Dariusz Bladek out there limited yesterday and today with that ankle injury that he's still trying to come back from. And then still a little bit concerning that you've got Maurice Carnell, Robertson Daniel, Curly Gittins Jr., none of them able to practice either yesterday or today. They're still out for now, and that one is a little bit more alarming. We'll have to see how things go as we get closer to the East Final, like basically the week leading up to the East Final. Obviously, if they're not practicing then I think we know the answer here. But I think hope was always being held out that they might be good to go and good to return. I'm not sure about that. So that's obviously not fitting in the good news category. I'm going out of order here. Andrew Harris practiced full today after not practicing yesterday. That is a big one. And he won't be brought back this week, I wouldn't think. I guess they could, but he's practicing because this coming game is the last game on his 6-game injured stint. And so he's allowed to practice this week. But if he played this weekend, it doesn't make sense to financially because it would mean that all 6 games of his salary would now count towards the cap. So I don't see that happening. But it's great that he's up and practicing. I would expect he will be a full go in the East Final. Chad Kelly, full practice yesterday and today. I know we knew after the game everything was fine. Everyone said everything was fine. But to actually have him out full yesterday and today, I think is good news. Deontay Knight was full. Flo Remalade full. Both those guys healthy scratches last game. AJ Ouellette had a rest day. I don't expect him to play this week. Cam Phillips full both yesterday and today. That is huge. To get Cam Phillips back would be a real positive thing for the Argonauts because when he was injured, at the time that he was injured, he was the most targeted receiver on Toronto. And so to bring back a target like that, like they've been doing just fine without him, but he's a great receiver. And to put him back on the inside there, to see him go full, he's a guy that I would like to get a little bit of work in this week. I don't think he's in the same week of the injuries. Now, maybe I'm wrong in that. I don't think he's on the same injury week as Harris. I think he could go this week, but I'm not 100%. I got to look that up. But yeah, this is good news. The Argos are getting healthy at the right time. They've had weeks to recover for some of these guys. A couple other guys that are banged up, like Allen, like Kelly, look to be okay. So yeah, all positives coming out of Toronto. For the Ottawa Redblacks, I don't know exactly what we'll see from them this week either, but it's mostly good news for them. Crum was able to practice full. They were able to get Lucas Cormier full, Justin Howell full, Brandon Dandridge didn't, Nigel Romick was full, and then Dante Bull did not practice, and Zach Pelios was limited the last 2 days. I don't expect him to play this week with that. I think it's a concussion that he's recovering from. So that is the injury report, and yeah, good news largely for the Toronto Argonauts. All right, let's get into this game preview, JB. The game that we've talked about this situation for several weeks now, and they're finally here. They have a chance at 16-2. We know that Chad Kelly is going to dress but not play. We know this is going to be a Cam Dukes, Brian Scott game. To me, that means most of the offense is going to get a rest where they can. I expect the defense to be largely the same, like rotating through guys that haven't had a break yet, but otherwise largely the starting defense. But I think that offense is going to have a lot of new pieces and new faces in there. How hard do they go after this 16-2 record, or do they even want it at this point? I don't know how to read it.
I do think they want it. I think that's clear. I think that there is a part of them that wants it, that wants to try. It would not surprise me if guys played the first half to see if they might be able to, to basically see if Ottawa's going to roll over, and maybe you can, if you can go up a touchdown or two and kind of ride that to the end of the game, and, hope that Ottawa is, 3-2-1 Cancun. I think that, is possible. I do think that's possible. It would not surprise. In fact, it would surprise me more if they didn't do that. If they didn't roll starters out, because I know there's a push, and it's going to be hard for the coaching staff to completely ignore it. But also, the coaching staff know what worked last year and what had them ready for that Eastern final. So I do think at the end of the day, you got to go with exactly what you did last year. I think that's the right move.
Yeah, and this has been their MO, not even that, like the year before as well. That game 2 years ago against Edmonton where they just didn't put anybody in. And then last year, this was the Chad Kelly game last year. A really exciting game, unlike the Edmonton one the year before. But last year was hugely exciting because you had, Chad came in and he was just throwing bullets all over the place and putting up jump balls. Remember, Juwan Breskison's touchdown was still one of the most ridiculous touchdown catches we've seen. Dejan Brissett had a touchdown in that game too that was hugely exciting. Guys that hadn't had a lot of action all season suddenly were out there having fun, scoring points. And I don't know if you're going to get that same result because I don't think there's necessarily a Chad Kelly coming off the bench here. But I think it's going to look a lot like that, where most of these guys on offense are not going to be your regulars. And on the other side of the ball, Ottawa is playing for something in a way, but it's an individual thing. There's a lot of players like starters on that team that are now playing for jobs and playing for film and hoping to get picked up. It's not as easy to get picked up when you're coming from a 4-win team as it is, for backups or starters on a winning team, a successful team, even if your contract is up. So those guys have something to play for. Those coaches too, they don't know the future and what's in store for them. So I expect a full out effort from some of the guys.
Yeah, I think Ottawa plays hard. I don't think Ottawa has any interest in being there for Toronto setting a record as the most wins in the season.
That's true.
I think Ottawa will. Yeah, I would be surprised if Ottawa rolled over. I think that they are going to. They're going to play that game to win.
It's time for OCDC. OCDC is brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. They invite you to experience Etobicoke's premier licensed men's grooming lounge for hair, face, and body care, celebrating 10 years in the Kingsway. It's right next to Royal York Station, an easy walk from the subway. Go in, get your haircut, get a shave, try it out. If you never had a barbershop shave, it's something that you've got to do. It's like nothing else. Just to lie back there, totally relaxed, get the hot shaving cream on your face, and just be totally taken care of. Try that out. Get a haircut. Do the whole thing. You won't regret it. It's an awesome experience. The Business Barbershop and Spa in the Kingsway. All right, JB, I'm going to start off with the Ottawa Redblacks on the offensive side of the ball. So for me, this is a little different this week because this is going to be an evaluation process kind of for both teams. And so like I said, we know Chad Kelly's not starting this game. He's going to dress but not play. On the other side of the ball, we don't really know what we're going to see out there, but I think they're still going to be evaluating most of their regular starters and trying to make decisions about who do we keep around here, who still wants to play. And I think knowing that you're going to get a pretty base look from Toronto on both offense and defense, I think Ottawa's offense has got to go out there also with a base look. Let's just go back to basics. No trickery, nothing special like that. Let's see who can run what. And I think that's a good plan. I would run that base offense. Balance your run and pass. Mix in the quick game with slower developing plays. Run through your play action. Attack every spot in the field. Get good film for evaluation purposes. For Ottawa, I don't know if they're trying to win this game or not. Like, I think they are trying to win this game. But I think the more important thing, if that coaching staff feels comfortable that they're coming back, and I don't know if they do or not, but I would imagine that there are some nervous coaches in the Ottawa building. But I think you want to use this opportunity to properly evaluate, because I think it's a team that really has to move on from a lot of guys. And I think this will be a good test. Who's going to play for me today? When you're thinking about getting out of here, you're thinking about flying to Cancun or wherever it is, who's going to play for me today? And so you run your basic stuff and see who's in and who's not. What's your defensive plan for the Ottawa Redblacks, JB?
Well, no one has really been able to do it. So I guess you would probably come up with something exotic, as you know, you literally have nothing to lose. I think that obviously rushing the quarterback has not been something anybody has had any success with. I do feel like there are opportunities to steal the ball if you can keep a shell that is deep enough to contain those deep receivers. I mean, I think those deep passes are there. They have shown some issues with cover one. So I would probably mix in some more cover one and just a loaded box to try and keep any running game in check. I think, quarterback wise, if Kelly's not in, everything's going to be underneath. So I think that you want to try and force the deep pass, and take away the checkdowns, take away the sideline throws, take away the easy passes to build confidence. I think you 10 yards and in is what you're looking to do here. You're all over that. And if a backup quarterback can hit 40-yard passes, then, you tip your hat. But I definitely am playing really tight man in that underneath stuff, and no free passes, because you have to make a quarterback earn the free underneath stuff. And until they do, I would be all over it.
Switching to the good guys, this plan, again, it's different because it's going to be Cam Dukes and Brian Scott. I think the priority is anyone that you need to get a look at. So anyone that Coach Dinwiddie feels like either they're returning from injury or they haven't been involved a lot lately, you got to get them involved early, and you're going to forget about the game plan, but force the ball to those guys that you need to get looks. Aside from that, I really want to get a lot of pass protection reps for Adeboboye. This is something that I think he still needs. He's getting a lot better at it, but he hasn't been given anywhere near the opportunity, even like per snap wise that AJ Ouellette has. And that's part of what makes AJ Ouellette such a good running back, is that he is a good pass protector. And this is something that's really difficult to rep in practice the same way that you can get experience in a game. And so I want Adeboboye hanging in the pocket on almost everything that Toronto runs to work that pass protection, because that, if he can get that down, he's got all the other tools. We've seen the other stuff. We know what he can do. Pass protection is the only thing that I haven't really seen enough from him yet. And so going into next season, that's what this game is for the Argos, is evaluating your guys for next year. These, especially the second, third string guys, see what Adeboboye is like, see how much he's taken in from AJ Ouellette and Andrew Harris, see what he's taken from the reps that he's gotten, and really test him and hope that Ottawa sends some challenging things your way. They didn't leave him in a lot last week in the Saskatchewan game, I think, because again, you don't, with your starting quarterback in there, with Chad Kelly in there, you don't want to risk, well, what if these blitzes don't get picked up? And so for the most part, he wasn't in there pass protecting a little bit. But I really want to see that a lot this week. And you can evaluate your offensive line. You can evaluate your quarterbacks. Those are all important things for Toronto's offensive play. I don't care what they run in terms of the actual plays themselves, but run things that allow you to test the O-line, the backup O-linemen that are in there, the backup quarterbacks that are in there, and Adebayo's pass protection. What is your defensive plan for Toronto in stopping whatever they throw at the Argonauts? I don't know what that will be.
Yeah, they certainly. I mean, Crum has been better for them, but passing has not been a strong point for Ottawa this year. I think that I would, obviously it's not that exciting. You're looking to be incredibly vanilla, like the second exhibition game before your first regular season. You're going to play really boring cover 2 shell. I think you might play some man to get a look and get some film on some man looks and see how much that can hold up. So I would probably play more man defense than normal just to get a look and get some film on how feasible or reasonable it is as an alternative. I wouldn't send any blitzes that are in any way interesting, because who needs to give away any of your plans? I think you might send a few linebacker blitzes just because you haven't done that very often, and you want to get some film on that. But I think you're just trying to create some decent film on some areas that you would like to take a look at, that you feel might do with a little polishing. And this is a chance for you to get some teach tape.
It's time for one thing. JB, my one thing is something I've been hoping for weeks now. Javon Leake needs that 5th punt return touchdown to tie a CFL record. That is my one thing this week. This is a big demand, but it's been weeks since his 4th. He's had so many close calls, so many almost, so many one more arm tackle, and he's gone, and they haven't come true. This week, this is the one. That's my one thing. Javon Leake, punt return touchdown. Play him, Coach Dinwiddie. You got to play Javon Leake. Let him go for the record this week. What's your one thing, JB?
My one thing is I would like Toronto to score 1 touchdown more than Winnipeg and give up 1 touchdown less than Winnipeg. And I would love to see Toronto end the season with most points for and least points against.
Yeah, that's a nice combo, and they're right there able to do it. And so this game, I think it's going to be a pretty low scoring game, just based on I'm kind of thinking more 2 years ago than last year. Last year was a bit of an exception for a game like this, where there were points back and forth. Like Montreal was on fire in that game. They scored so many points. It was Dominic Davis that was just throwing the ball all over the place.
He was playing amazing.
Yeah, and so I don't know that that doesn't usually happen in these games. I think it's going to be far more low scoring, but it would be really cool for this Argos team, this historically good Argos team, to end up with most points for, fewest points against, for sure.
Yeah, in some ways, I think that locks in their legacy more than winning the 16.
Prediction time. Who wins? How does it end?
Well, I mean, I've picked against the Argos twice this year, and both times, due respect, they should have lost those games, and then they didn't. I am going to pick the Argos. I think that they will find a way to give it to the Redblacks. They have shown it all season. I have no reason not to believe that they won't find some way to get a safety rouge combo with 4 seconds left to win the game.
Yeah, a combination safety rouge for the win. That would be
safety followed by rouge.
Oh, back to back. Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to see.
It just feels like they're it is undeniable and is coming with and cannot be argued with. They just have this fate to them that great teams have. So I cannot pick against them again.
For me, I've got something very similar. Or do you have a score for yours? Do you have a final score?
Yes, I'm going to take the Argos 28 and Ottawa 17.
And I think this is a much lower scoring game than that. I think Toronto wins too in a painful, grinded out way that is just going to torture Ottawa Redblack fans that show up for this last game of the season. They've seen it before, and I think they'll see it again. And yeah, I think it'll be as not quite as painful as it was for Saskatchewan last week when Cameron Dukes led the team down the field on that amazing drive for the go-ahead touchdown. But I think there'll be a little bit of that in there too. I think Toronto wins 13-10. I think it's a really low scoring.
A sub 19 game.
Yeah, and they actually win. I know, it's sub 19 games they don't win.
2-45 or something? No.
Yeah, this is one that breaks it. 13-10 for the Argonauts. Oof. JB, it is time for Put Me Down for 2.5, or 20 if you have it. This Put Me Down for 20 is... it's a good thing we're near the end of the regular season here, JB, because I think loans are coming, but you might have a reprieve today because there are no lines up. There's no anything up right now because obviously sites are waiting to see the depth charts because these games don't mean anything. None of the 3 games this weekend are for anything at all, and so they want to wait and see, I guess, before posting any line.
Do you know what you call 3 games that don't mean anything?
What?
You call it a Redblack.
Yeah, so we'll see what this week looks like. But before we get into that, I just want to say that while gambling can be a fun way to enhance your sports viewing experience, it's important to do so responsibly. Set a budget, never bet more than you're happy to lose, an amount that you would view as a cost of entertainment. And if you or anyone you know has a problem gambling or develops a problem with gambling, you can call the Ontario Problem Gambling Helpline, 1-888-230-3505. So, JB, it was another rough week for you last week. You were now down to 2.5 golden fleeces. And I think we will give you a 20 golden fleece loan.
No, I will take my 2.5.
You'll take your 2.5?
I will take my 2.5 and build from the ashes.
All right, that's fine. You take your 2.5, put it into a super parlay if you want to, and we'll see what you come up with. Of course, this will be the one that wins because that's Murphy's Law, right? When instead of betting 10, you suddenly lower your bet to 2.5, and then you win a ridiculous parlay. I'm currently standing at 346, having hit my Calgary plus 390 last week, which was huge.
I know. I should have taken that juice. I don't know why I didn't. I should have.
Well, you're the one that pointed it out to me, and I'm like, oh, that's really good. I know that's pretty typical too, but
British Columbia.
So we will put out our bets on Twitter once there are lines, but obviously we can't contribute to that right now. So this is going to end up being a very short segment. But yeah, look for that on Twitter for our Argos bet and our rest of the league bet. All right, it is time for our CFL picks. Good week for me last week. I was 3-0. You were 1-2, so I have reclaimed the lead, JB, by 1 game going into the last week of the regular season. I'm 51-27. You are 50-28. Let's go through them. So, Winnipeg at Calgary. This one I see being a Calgary win, and the reason I think that is that I feel like Calgary is going to be playing closer to what they regularly put out there, because I think they need to. Like these, I don't think they're going to treat this like a bye week, like a rest week. I think they're going to try and keep going what they had last week, because they actually looked good in BC. They actually played well. I know the Lions didn't, but it wasn't like Calgary was just kind of going through the motions. They actually looked good. And I think knowing that coaching staff, I think they want to try and put that out there again. I don't think they want that to fall asleep. So I think Winnipeg's going to be resting everybody, and I think they're going to be kind of just going through the motions, not wanting to show anything at all. And I think Calgary pulls that one out. Winnipeg or Calgary, JB?
I can take Winnipeg. I think that Calgary is going to be a little more. I mean, it's interesting. Calgary's at home. I agree. I think all of your points are legitimate. And the reality is I just got to make up ground. So I'm not going to pretend it's anything other than that.
All right. Hamilton at Montreal. I have no idea what to do with this game. Again, a game between these two teams that know they're going to be playing each other next week in a playoff game. They're desperately trying not to show a thing. And I just kind of think about, like, whose backups are better. And I think it's Hamilton's. I think Hamilton's backups have had a lot of playing time. Like if you bring in, even like you're looking to bring in quarterbacks, you bring in whoever you want. They've all had playing time this season. And so I think Hamilton actually might win this game handily, even though it's in Montreal. I just think that their second string is more game ready than Montreal. So that's my call.
I like Montreal at home. Obviously, I also like the need to catch you, but those two facts match up nicely. I like always, there are certain facts that I agree with. Edmonton should not be spoken about, and Montreal at home.
So we both have Toronto for the third game of the week. So it could come down to the Calgary, Winnipeg, and Montreal, Hamilton meaningless games to decide it all. This is why in fantasy they don't play in the last week of the season because of things like this. But here we are fighting it out in the last week of the season. Well, that will just about do it for us on this final pregame walkthrough episode of the regular season. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.